The House will please come to order. We are privileged to have the Reverend Dan Bader, representing the Pier 4 Pier Ministerial Association, to lead us in prayer. And we've got new pages today. Tori Rasmussen from Hudson is going to start us off with the pledge the way most of us say it. And then Joanna Bowl from Ward, she knows sign language. She's going to sign the pledge. Please stand.
Will you pray with me? Gracious God, as we gather in these chambers, we recognize that there are many voices representing the diverse thoughts and ideals for leading and addressing issues within the state of South Dakota. We ask that you would direct those in these chambers to have ears to listen, discerning hearts to seek that which is right and just, and the courage to be the bold kind of leaders that seek to honor all lives who claim this state as their home. Holy God, we offer and ask for your blessing. Amen.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Allers, Anderson, Bartles, Barthel, Bartling, Beal, Bordeaux, Bruner, Campbell, Carson, Chase, Clark, Conzett, Dennert, Diedrich, DeSanto, Duval, Freimuller, Glanzer, Goodwin, Gosh, Greenfield, Haugard, Hawley, Heineman, Holmes, Howard, Hunhoff, Jameson, Jensen, Johns, Johnson, Kaiser, Carr, Ketwig, Lake, Latterell, Lessmeister, Livermont, Lust, Marty, May, McClary, McPherson, Mills, Otten, Peterson, Kent, Peterson, Sioux, Pischke, Quam, Rasmussen, Reed, Roden, Ring, Rounds, Rosem, Schaefer, Shanefish, Smith, Soley, Steinhauer, Stevens, Tolson, Turbeville, Wheezy, Willardson, Wismer, York, Zickman, Speaker Mickelson. Mr. Speaker, a quorum is present.
Approval of the journal.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Legislative Procedure respectfully reports that the Chief Clerk of the House has had under consideration the House Journal of the 16th day. All errors, typographical or otherwise, are duly marked in the temporary journal for correction, and we hereby above move the adoption of the report. Respectfully submitted, G. Mark Mickelson, Chair.
All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, we got some bright new shiny faces from high schools across South Dakota. Why don't you guys spread out so everyone can get in front, if you don't mind. So we have some new pages here today, and we're going to swear them in. So you face me, and I'll administer the oath, and then when we're done, you can turn around and they'll greet you. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of South Dakota, and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of House Page according to the best of my abilities. So help me God. Congratulations. We're glad to have you. You're now officially a page. Why don't you guys turn around? Would you please welcome the new pages? Reports of standing committees.
The Committee on State Affairs respectfully reports that House Bill 1286 do pass. House Bill 1237, 1239, and House Joint Resolution 1005 were deferred to the 41st Legislative Day. Respectfully submitted, Larry Roden, Chair. The Committee on Judiciary respectfully reports that House Bill 1254 and Senate Bill 74 do pass. House Bill 1136 and 1249 do pass and be placed on the consent calendar. House Bill 1126 do pass as amended. House Bill 1244 do pass as amended and be placed on the consent calendar. Respectfully submitted, Mike Stevens, Chair. The Committee on Education respectfully reports that House Bill 1221 do pass. House Bill 1215 do pass as amended and be placed on the consent calendar. House Bill 1122, 1194, and 1198 were deferred to the 41st Legislative Day. Respectfully submitted, Timothy Johns, Chair. And the Committee on Commerce respectfully reports that House Bill 1236 do pass as amended and be placed on the consent calendar. House Bill 53 and 1223 were deferred to the 41st legislative day. Respectfully submitted, Tim Rounds, Chair. Also, Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Legislative Procedure respectfully reports that the Office of Engrossing and Enrolling has carefully compared House Bill 1009 and 1010 and finds the same correctly enrolled. Respectfully submitted, G. Mark Mickelson, Chair. Committee, also, Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Legislative Procedure respectfully reports that House Bill 1034 was delivered to His Excellency the Governor for his approval at 10:15 a.m. on February 5th, 2018. Respectfully submitted, G. Mark Mickelson, Chair.
Messages?
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to return herewith House Bills number 1009 and 1010, which have passed the Senate without change. Respectfully, Kay Johnson, Secretary. Also, Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to transmit herewith Senate Bill number 31, 47, 76, 106, 151, and 156, which have passed the Senate, and your favorable consideration is respectfully requested. Respectfully, Kay Johnson, Secretary. Also, Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to transmit herewith Senate concurrent resolutions number 11 and 12, which have been adopted by the Senate, and your concurrence is respectfully requested. Respectfully, Kay Johnson, Chair, or Secretary.
Motions and resolutions.
House Concurrent Resolution 1001, calling for statewide recognition of the brain drain currently taking place in South Dakota and urging state and local officials to take action to attract new residents to the state after they graduate. House Concurrent Resolution 1001 was read the second time, having
Discussion. Representative Rasmussen, I expect. There you are. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Resolution 1001 comes to us from two students from USD. They spent some time in a political science project, and it has ended up before us today. Their project was brain drain, and they have helped write a resolution addressing this situation in which they believe is important for not only you and I to address, but our governor's office. There was an amendment that was being proposed, but it is unacceptable. They went a little farther than the other legislator here on the floor had asked. So we find ourselves in a little bit of a query. I could move forward without an amendment.
Well, it's on the calendar. It's going to get voted on.
Okay.
So you just stand behind it, and maybe your friend will figure out an amendment for you. Representative Rasmussen, do you wish to defer any of your time to Representative Heineman?
I will.
Okay, Representative Heineman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sorry for the mix-up. I have an amendment.
Okay, I'm having a feeling it's going to be a verbal.
No. It should be distributed at your desk.
Oh, okay. Well, then we're just going to pretend you're on your own time right now.
Okay. Okay, and that's number C1001CA.
Okay, I'm looking for a copy here as I speak. Yep. Do you wish to move it at this time?
I do.
Very good. The concurrent resolution's been moved and seconded by Representative Rasmussen. So now we're on an amendment to the resolution.
Just right to the.
Do we have a second on the amendment? All right. I'm still waiting for a copy of it.
Mr. Speaker, this little gal there has got one right there.
Okay, I got one. Thank you. All right, so this is Amendment C1001CA.
That's correct.
All right, we're all caught up. It's been moved and seconded. Go ahead and discuss the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I apologize for the confusion. Just a little short history of this. This concurrent resolution was before the body, and at that time I discussed it with the sponsor, and I asked that it could be amended. And then after some discussions, we went ahead and asked the speaker to be involved, and the speaker decided to refer it back to a committee. So it went into a committee, Education, and they discussed the bill in its present, the resolution in its present form, and then it came back here in front of you. So it's a concurrent resolution. At that time, I got involved again with the discussions, and I discussed the issue of brain drain. First of all, it's been used by some candidates statewide here recently. I believe it's a misnomer myself. That is a little bit of a disagreement we have with the sponsor. But I will say her confusion with the amendment today, as we speak, is it appeared that it had deleted the whole last resolved section, but it does not. So I would hope that she can speak to the fact that it's a friendly amendment and she will concur. Now, just a couple of points that I guess I would like to bring up. I think when we talk about brain drain in South Dakota, that's a negative connotation. If you'll refer to a Rapid City Journal article back in 2014 that was done by a journalist, he pointed out through numbers that we actually have a net gain in our state of people that are graduating and staying here. I'll also refer you to the fact book, which is your Board of Regents fact book for fiscal year 2018 on page 31. It talks about placement outcomes of Regento graduates. It goes through an in-depth analysis of how many people we retained after the one-year period. And if you look at the statistics, you'll see that 71%, more than 71% of our graduates are retained in our state 1 year postgraduate. And 30% of them go out of state. But what's more important is that we have 30% of the non-residents that also stay in state. So if you add those two numbers together and then you include the career and technical graduates in our state, we actually have a net gain of people in our state coming for graduate level of some kind job opportunities. So all my point is that the amendment specifically deletes the word brain drain, and it also indicates in several places you'll see that with the students and their study, that they wanted to encourage our Office of Economic Development, contact people, I believe it's 30 to 49 years of age, encourage them through social media to come back to the state that have not. So with that, it's a lengthy confusion. I'm sorry for the mix-up, but I do hope that the sponsor will concur and we can go on to pass the amendment.
Very good. The question before us is Amendment C 1001CA. Further remarks?
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It was my understanding when I contacted two students who supported brain drain and this resolution, it was my understanding that we weren't going to talk about brain drain. So I disagree with the previous speaker, and I would like to use the same. So no, I'm not exactly sure if I agree that it's friendly. We're both using the same article that was what he referenced.
Well,
And
the
he
question before us is his amendment, and it strikes certain language. And do you have a position on his amendment?
Because he chose to speak on the floor against and use the word brain drain, I find it unfriendly. So
You do, then go ahead and continue your remarks.
I would now like to just keep the resolution as it was presented to me and as it came out of the Education Committee of 12-0. These two students worked extremely hard and came to our Capitol to help write this resolution. Sometimes we will disagree on what our statistics are and how we would read them. In the article in this 2012 or 14 article, it calls brain drain a myth. But I would like to, if you would like to pull it up, it says the state brain drain is a myth. In the second paragraph, the article states that a trend is reversing itself relating to brain drain. So if we're reversing a brain drain, that is not a myth, it's an entity in itself. The third, fourth paragraph then calls brain drain a myth. A myth is like a superhero or a story or a parable. And a couple of paragraphs before that, they just stated that it was indeed an issue. I have other things to ask you to reverse this, but I wasn't prepared. So I just now think that it's unfriendly, and the students just wanted us to be aware of the fact that we have a brain drain in South Dakota and would like to reverse it by encouraging people to stay and come here. And that is my statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Rasmussen. Seeing no further remarks on the motion to amend, the question before the body is the do pass motion on Amendment C1001CA. All those members in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no? No. Motion fails. All right. Representative Rounds, you may have been right. I don't know that we had that motion under consideration. Do you want to make a motion? You move that HCR 1001 be adopted? Second? Okay. We've had that debate. No further remarks? Any further remarks on House Concurrent Resolution 1001? Seeing none, the question before the body is adoption of House Concurrent Resolution 1001. All those members in favor shall vote aye. All those opposed, no. The clerk shall unlock the voting machine. The members shall proceed to vote. Yes. Representative Willitson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Personal privilege.
Granted.
I'd like to introduce to the members of the House another one of my grandchildren. Stand up, sweetie. This is my granddaughter, Caitlin Willitson. She's 12 years old, goes to school at St. Mary's Catholic in Sioux Falls, so please welcome her.
Please welcome Caitlin. Is our doctor of the day in the gallery? Where? Oh, now wait a minute. She's kind of famous. Is that Lisa Brown from Custer? So Lisa Brown, she's obviously sponsored by the State Medical Association. She's a family medicine physician in Custer, practicing clinic, emergency management, hospital, and long-term care. Sounds like about everything. She's a USD med school graduate and got her residency at the Sioux Falls Family Medical Medicine Residency. Her father is a friend of several of ours here in the body, the former Senator Arnie Brown. Father-in-law. Yes, you don't want to claim. Okay. How many years was he in the Senate?
That's a piece of trivia I don't actually.
Yeah, me neither. Let's please welcome Lisa to the gallery.
Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were 51 yeas, 17 nays, and excused 2.
House Concurrent Resolution 1001, having received the majority vote of the members elected, is hereby declared adopted. Questions on the title? Seeing none, title is deemed approved.
Representative Sue Peterson moved that the Committee on Education be instructed to deliver House Bill 1120 to the floor of the House pursuant to Joint Rule 7-7.
Okay, is there a second? Remarks on that motion?
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Peterson.
thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the body. This is a bill that had 40 House sponsors, and it was deferred to the 41st day in House Education, but given that there were so many House sponsors, I think it's worthy of debate by the wider body, so I'd really appreciate your support.
Further remarks on that motion? Representative Johns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill was fully discussed and deliberated upon by the committee, and for that reason, I would ask that you not agree with the current motion made and defeat it. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks? Representative Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, to follow up on that, my understanding is this bill was discussed for an hour and a half one day and a half hour the next day with a 9-5 vote, and currently this is a local decision, which I think is where we ought to leave
Let's
it.
not get into the substance of the matter. Thank you. All right, I may have violated that rule once before myself. So we'll give you a pass. Everyone gets one pass. All right, any further remarks? Okay, seeing none, the question before the body. Oh, is she supported? So if you support Representative Peterson's motion to deliver House Bill 1120 to the House floor, please stand. She is supported. So House Education will need to meet between now and tomorrow's floor session and deliver that bill to the floor with a recommendation. Representative Johns.
If I may, House Education will meet immediately following our today's session.
Okay, do you got a location?
How about in the
Hallway?
Speaker lobby would work.
Speaker's lobby, very good.
Thank you.
First reading of Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 11, expressing support for access to patient-centered and family-focused advanced care planning. Also, first reading of Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 12, urging the Environmental Protection Agency to update the Clean Air Act to allow mid-range ethanol blends in all standard automobiles. Both of those, the Speaker has waived the committee referral. Representative Qualm moved that House Bill 1232 be referred from the Committee on Education to the House Committee on Appropriations.
All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries.
Representative Qualm moved that House Concurrent Resolution 1007 be referred from the Committee on State Affairs to the Committee on Health.
All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Consideration of committee reports.
Representative Qualm moved that the reports of the standing committees on state affairs on House Bill 1140, as found on page 306 of the House Journal, and on House Bill 1172, as found on page 307 of the House Journal, and on House Bill 1176, as found on page 307 of the House Journal, and on House Bill 1177, as found on page 307 of the House Journal, and on House Bill 1196, as found on page 308 of the House Journal. Also judiciary on House Bill 1139, as found on page 309 of the House Journal, be adopted.
Second. All in favor of said motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. First reading of House bills.
Mr. Speaker, there are no House bills, but the Speaker declared that House Bill 1144 was withdrawn at the request of the prime sponsor pursuant to Joint Rule 6B-1.1.
First reading of Senate bills.
The Committee on Appropriations, at the request of an act to make an appropriation to reimburse healthcare professionals who have complied with the requirements for certain healthcare recruitment assistance programs and to declare an emergency.
The Speaker assigned Senate Bill 156 to Ag, to Commerce 151, to Judiciary 106, to State Affairs 76, and waives assignment on Senate Bills 31 and 47. Consent calendar.
House Bill 1119, an act to revise certain provisions regarding riparian buffer strips. House Bill 1129, an act to revise certain provisions regarding full-time equivalent positions. House Bill 1127, an act to revise certain provisions relating to fees charged for security freezes. And Representative Bordeaux requested that House Bill 1165 be removed from the consent calendar.
The consent calendar, having had a second reading, is up for consideration and final questions. Does anyone have a question? Seeing none, all those members in favor of the consent calendar shall vote yes. All those opposed, no. Clerk will unlock the voting machine, and the member shall proceed to vote. We'll go with Representative Lake. Granted.
Yes, I would like you to direct your attention to the back of the chambers, and on behalf of Representative Gosh and myself, welcome the Ipswich Junior Government class along with their advisor, Angie Kalisa.
Everyone from Ipswich needs to wave. Representative Heineman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Personal privilege.
Granted.
Yes, today I'm fortunate, probably the only day of the year, that I have my grandchildren here. I have my twin granddaughters, Rachel and Rebecca Heineman, and their mom and dad up in the gallery here, Kathy and Jason, and their two sons, Matthew and James. And the other two are sleeping, so.
What town are they from?
Flandreau.
Flandreau,
They
very
live
good.
right south of me.
Let's welcome them to the House chamber. Representative Goodwin.
Personal privilege.
Granted.
A deep, dark family secret is I'm married to a preacher's daughter, and the preacher's here. My father-in-law, Pastor Bob Osborne, right up here in the gallery.
Let's have a wave. I think there was a song in Pulp Fiction or something about that. But Representative Johns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have two special guests in the gallery today, the 2018 South Dakota Teacher of the Year and the South Dakota 2017 Milliken Educator Award winner. I'd ask that both of them please stand. They are Rachel Schaefer and Carla Dede. Rachel is a kindergarten teacher at Elkton Elementary School. She is known for her great work in the classroom and for being a strong advocate for the teaching profession as a whole. As the South Dakota Teacher of the Year, she'll represent our state in the National Teacher of the Year competition this coming spring. Carla is a National Board Certified Math Teacher at Harrison South Middle School. She is the award recipient this year, which is an award referred to as the quote-unquote Oscar of Teaching. Carla has led Harrisburg South Middle School's personalized teaching initiative and is known for making strong connections with the students. Please join me in recognizing these outstanding teachers for their commitment.
Give us a wave, ladies. All right. Remember what that fine is? We're going to have to decide what the fine is for not voting on time. You get one warning.
I think, oh,
You gonna ask them to vote?
yes. Representative Bartles, Representative Peterson Sue. Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were yeas 68, excused 2.
The consent calendar, having received the majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Second reading of House bills.
Representative Quam moved that House Bill 1043 be placed to precede House Bill 1074 on today's calendar.
All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries.
House Bill 1043, an act to authorize the construction of the National Guard Readiness Center at the Rapid City Airport, to make an appropriation therefore and to declare an emergency.
House Bill 1043, is it? Having had a second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Carson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 1043 is a special appropriation bill included in the governor's proposed budget that would appropriate $500,000 in general funds, $3,345,000 in federal fund expenditure for the year 2019 towards the first year's construction cost of a new readiness center adjacent to the Army Aviation Support Facility in Rapid City Regional Airport. Presently, there's 8 aviation units comprised of 154 soldiers occupying a space at the Army Aviation Support Facility located at the Rapid City Airport. The Army Aviation Support Facility is an aircraft maintenance and flight operation facility that does not have the needed training space, storage space, administration space adequate for their training. Therefore, these 8 units are considered homeless. This project is constructing a facility that's 58,751 square foot National Guard Readiness Center with the backup energy power, accessory controlled building, vehicle parking, and all the site improvements. This facility is designed to be to last for a life of minimum 50 years. It will be located within the current state of South Dakota lease boundaries of the Rapid City Airport. The total estimate of the cost is $20 million. Federal appropriation is $15 million, while requiring the state to match $5 million. Fortunately, the construction period is spread over 3 years. The project is a unique benefit, resolving a shortfall in the Readiness Center space in the Army Aviation Support Facility that this unit now occupies. Deferring construction of this facility could impact the unit's ability for quick response to emergencies. I know money's tight, but getting selected for a military construction project like this does not come along often. The last Readiness Center was in Watertown in 2013. This facility will not be ready till 2021. We will use $616,115 out of the Army National Guard Maintenance and Repair Fund, in combination with the $500,000 in the general fund bill, will pay the $1,115,000 share, the state share of the construction cost. Since 2011, we have closed armories in 7 communities. I would appreciate your support. Go green on this bill. Thank you.
Further remarks? Representative Goodwin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. This is the South Dakota Army National Guard Aviation. Dave Johnson, there is aviation in the Army. And this unit here has been deployed several times in the War on Terror. In addition, they give us invaluable support in forest fires in the Black Hills. They're rated as the top units in the nation, active and reserve, and they're an absolute bang for the taxpayer. It costs 1/3 to run an aviation unit in the National Guard versus what it is on active duty, and yet they perform better than their active duty counterparts. I urge a vote of green on this bill.
Very good. Further remarks? See none. Question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1043. Due to an appropriation, this is a 2/3 vote. All those members in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed, no. The clerk will unlock the voting machine and the members shall proceed to vote. Now, are there any nurses on the House floor today? Do we have any nurses in our body? So, Representative Hunoff, you got to carry this load all by yourself, but on behalf, I've got a note here, on behalf of Representative Hunoff, would you please welcome the nurses in the gallery today? The South Dakota Nurses Association has over 200 students and nurses from across the state in town today for, guess what? You guys can go ahead and stand up if you want to, the 42nd Annual Nurses Day at the Legislature. They are asking all of you to join them tonight for an annual chili supper from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Ramkota Galleries A, B, and C. Please welcome the nurses to the House chambers today.
Representative Campbell, Dennert, Rosem, Schaefer, and Steinhauer.
First time notice for all involved. Representative Rosem. Granted.
Thank you. Behind our voting board up here, I think, is where the class of Corsica Stickney, senior class of Corsica Stickney, sat down. These are the social studies kids along with their teacher, Wade Gall. Please welcome them today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were yeas 68, excused 2.
House Bill 1043, having received the majority vote, the 2/3 vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1074, an act to revise certain provisions regarding the creation of business improvement districts.
House Bill 1074, having had a second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Lust.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the body. House Bill 1074 is really a parity bill. When the authorization for bid districts was created years ago, it was confined to only municipalities that had zoning. Well, especially West River, not all communities have zoning. So this bill merely allows municipalities who do not have zoning to elect to pursue the bid process if they so choose. I'll stand by for questions and appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks? Further remarks? Seeing none, the question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1074. All those members in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed, no. The clerk shall unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote. Should we wait a little bit, or should we sing Happy Birthday? You guys want to wait? Well, Representative Roden, he told me he turns Well, I'm not going to tell him how old you said you turned, but Representative Roden has a birthday today. And Representative Roden, you've got a special guest on the floor. Would you introduce your special guest on the floor with you today?
There's a sign in there. I changed my vote to no.
Representative Browns votes aye.
Please, stand up. Yeah, and I appreciate, Mr. Speaker, you're allowing me to bring Lori to the floor, or instructing me to do so. And so it's a privilege. The years I've been down here, I've never had the opportunity of having Lori on the floor with me. Of course, Lori is my youngest daughter. My younger sister, and so got to know her at a very young age. And she has been a lifelong friend and classmate and mentor and great person.
So they're twins.
And she is my twin sister, and so I thank the body and I'd ask, if you're going to do the birthday thing, that you would include my sister Lori. Thank you.
All right, Representative Tolson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Representative Roden, so you were born first, huh? Very good. How long have you been 39? Okay. Okay, are you ready to sing, everybody? Okay. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Larry Lori. Happy birthday to you.
Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were yeas 58, nays 10, excused 2.
House Bill 1074, having received the majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1157, an act to authorize certain alcohol manufacturers and wholesalers to enter into sponsorship agreements with certain alcohol retail licensees.
House Bill 1157, having had its second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Barthel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is an act to authorize certain alcohol manufacturers and wholesalers to enter into sponsorship agreements with certain alcohol retail licensees. Basically, what we're doing is putting into statute a practice that's been going on for probably the last 20 years or so. Recently, many of these venues are put on notice that the act of having a sponsorship by these entities is prohibited by law, so we're just trying to preserve that funding again for civic, charitable, and educational, fraternal, and veterans organizations that currently have relationships with wholesalers and manufacturers, such as events like Jazz Fest and so forth. It preserves a private funding source for public event centers, such as the Premier Center in Sioux Falls, the Swiftel Center in Brookings, and the Rapid City Civic Center, as well as preserving funding streams for other public events, such as the State Fair and other county fairs and festivals. The key to this is it reduces public funds at public events and facilities and the need for those funding. So rather than using tax dollars, we can use some of these private funds. Under this bill, the way it's written, the exclusive sales contracts based on the advertising agreement are still prohibited. It's permissive legislation. It authorizes these entities to market their products at appropriate locations and events, but no one's forced to do anything or enter into any agreement. All persons remain free to choose their actions. All the parties are licensed for alcoholic beverages by the state, and this doesn't expand or restrict that alcohol license. Similar exceptions exist in other states, so this is a new ground that we're plowing. I urge your support of this bill, and I'll stand by for questions.
Further remarks? House Bill 1157. We'll go to Representative Beal, then we'll come to you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I rise to suggest that the passage of this bill would send mixed messages to the public. Last Friday, the passage of HCR 1008 suggested advertising of alcoholic beverages at sporting events was improper. This bill attempts to move that in the opposite direction. It says advertising ought to be purchased at these events by manufacturers and distributors. This bill also seems to disadvantage small producers and distributors from having their products offered for sale at these events. I can't vote for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks? Representative Steinhauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have an amendment.
Okay, this is going to be a verbal?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is not the amendment at your desk. Go ahead and state your amendment.
Yes, I apologize that it's a voice, but it's late breaking. Basically, what we are doing is on line 9 of the bill, after the period after entity, we're striking no, and we're striking lines 10 and 11. So in essence, we're taking the last sentence.
Yep.
The last sentence off of the bill.
Got it. So that's the amendment. Do we have a second? We got a second? Okay. So just to be clear, the amendment is to strike the no after the period on line 9 and strike lines 10 and 11. Go ahead and discuss the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So by no means am I opposed to funding advertising or sponsorships. The purpose for removing this is to hopefully clear up issues. As we heard from the sponsor, the issue arose recently with the Department of Revenue cracking down on sponsorships and advertising agreements. This bill clears that up, but I think the last sentence adds some confusion, because here's what happens after talking to a legal mind in LRC, and I'm not a legal mind, I've been told that the South Dakota Supreme Court has held, and it certainly makes sense, that whenever you limit a activity, you're okay to do that activity until you meet or exceed the limit. Think about speed limits. If we didn't have speed limits, you could drive as fast as you want, but we've got an 80-mile-an-hour speed limit on the interstate. So that means you can drive up to 80 miles an hour. If we leave this sentence in, then basically we're saying that a sponsor or someone with an advertising agreement could say that they want special consideration up to, but not including exclusivity. So if you got Jessup Cellars, for example, that wants only their wine at your municipal liquor store, because this includes liquor stores or bars, they could say, I want you to put Jessup Cellars in, and we're going to buy you one of those residential coolers, and you can put in some of the local guys if you want. We're trying to promote local wine, local beer in the state of South Dakota. This phrase actually is contrary to that. We already have federal law that says you can't provide preferential treatment. So when I started pursuing this morning, I had a crazy idea of, well, let's at least reserve 20% of whatever they sell for the local guys or those that aren't writing out the checks. Maybe that's fair. But in talking to the sponsors, or actually the lobbyists for the sponsors, they said, Wayne, we don't need that because nobody's going to do that anyhow. They're going to sell what people want to buy. Well, if that's the case, then we don't need the last line. All we need is the first part of the bill. It says you can do sponsorships and advertising. No preferential treatments of federal law. We don't need the last sentence. It just adds conflict between the federal law and a statute that we'd be passing if we don't delete this last sentence.
Further discussion on the amendment? Get a little more discussion so people make sure they understand what they're voting on. Representative Barthel.
Well, I think the concern that the little guy is getting cut out on these deals is false, because the truth of the matter is these places are selling what sells. As a matter of fact, we heard that testimony in committee. It doesn't matter who happens to be sponsoring them, they still need to sell the beer or the wine or whatever the item is, because that's a huge revenue generator for a lot of these different venues. So they aren't going to stock things just so they can satisfy the little guy. If those things sell, they certainly will. But keep in mind that what we're doing here has been in practice for about 20 years. We're just putting that practice into statute.
Okay, do you have a position on the amendment?
I oppose the amendment.
You oppose the amendment. That is the question before us. Any further remarks on the amendment? Representative Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, I'll ask that you resist this amendment. One of the locations that is using this is the Swiftel Center. And when they do these types of agreements, the city councils or the governing body that usually has these public facilities will get the question asked, well, what about the other people? Does this give them exclusivity? And this portion that's being struck out clarifies that they will not be able to have exclusivity at that facility. And for that reason, I asked for you to resist this amendment.
Further remarks? Representative Rounds.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the author of the amendment.
Go ahead and state your question.
I think I heard in the testimony that if we leave the language in, it would interfere with federal law. Is that correct?
Do you wish to answer that question, Representative Steinhauer?
Yes, that is my understanding, because with this line in, you're allowed to ask for preferential treatment short of exclusivity. All this line does is prevent exclusivity. It doesn't prevent you from saying, I'll buy all new coolers and I don't think these things are really going to happen, but why do we enact laws that would allow these things to happen? To buy all the coolers for a municipal liquor store and say, hey, all I want you to do is sell Bud, except for that week before the 4th. Now you can sell Coors. They could do that and meet the letter of this law. You don't need this line because those types of things are already prohibited federally.
Representative Rounds, your floor.
Follow-up question?
Yeah, go ahead and state your question.
Doesn't the 21st Amendment give the states the rights over alcoholic beverages?
Representative Steinhauer, do you wish to answer that question?
I believe we have the right to be more restrictive whenever we choose to be.
Very good. Further remarks on the motion to amend? Okay. Representative Barthel.
Just to clarify the federal issue, federal law includes a reverse preemption clause which only applies to federal law as to the extent of the state law. So by passing this, that portion of the statute wouldn't apply.
Very good. Okay. Further remarks? We're on the motion to amend. Oh, it is your motion. Representative Hunoff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do have a question for the sponsor of the bill, so I understand by removing this section, does that mean then we could do exclusivity for someone to do their advertising or what you were describing?
Sure. Representative Barthel, that's addressed to you. You may answer that question, or you may ask someone else to answer it if you so choose.
Did you mean the amendment?
If we,
I apologize, Mr. Speaker?
Yeah.
I apologize. I meant for the sponsor of the amendment. By taking this out, does that mean then it does allow exclusivity with a distributor for the advertising or marketing?
Representative Steinhauer.
As I understand it, if we take this out, then federal law would prevent us from having preferential treatment, otherwise referred to as paid to play. So basically, you are choosing to advertise or sponsor an event or an organization or a liquor store or any kind of public. It could be the Beal Distributing Town Square in Rapid City. But by doing that, you don't get to dictate what they sell or don't sell.
Very good. Representative Lust.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sensing some uncertainty from the body on this issue, and so my question I have a question for the sponsor of the amendment.
Go ahead and state your question.
And my question would be, I understand what you're saying. Would it clarify the situation to change your amendment to express a prohibition against giving preferential treatment? Which
Representative Steinhauer, do you wish to answer that question?
That's essentially what I'm attempting to do.
Okay. Thank you. Well, Your Honor, or Mr. Speaker,
No, you can stick right to that first one. That'll work just fine.
That hurts. I would move Rule 517.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to wait a couple days on this one. Hang on a second. I'm looking that rule up. Okay, so Representative Lust makes a motion to defer consideration of the amendment under Rule 517, and we do have a second. We're not in the last 14 days of session. Okay, is he supported? 1/5, that's got to be 1/5. Yep, very good. 13's all I got. I guess it fails. Oh, I'm just kidding. All right. That carries. Yes, Representative Roden.
Point of order.
Go ahead and state your point.
I believe a 517 motion, preparatory remarks are disallowed in making a 517 motion.
You know, I'm going to rule that it was in order because I think his remarks were more on the amendment that was in question. That's going to be my ruling. Do you care to appeal? Okay. I appreciate you raising the point of order. Okay. Who taught you, Liz? Hey, wait a minute, time out. That motion is in order. I'm seeing 517-1. So that Representative Roden's point of order is valid. Came a little late, but I'm going to allow it. Does anyone else want to make that motion? Yep.
I'd move Rule 517 on this bill.
All in favor, please stand. Okay, he is supported. So that bill is 517.
House Bill 1070. An act to revise and repeal certain provisions regarding alcoholic beverages.
House Bill 1070, having had a second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Gosh.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, this is the longest bill that we will debate or have on the House floor this year. So I'm going to go ahead and accept the challenge in making it the shortest floor speech. This bill does nothing but clear up years and years and years of language from basically using Section 35 of our codified law as a punching bag, if you will. Throughout the years, there's been a lot of changes, so there's not very much uniformity. The department did a wonderful job of coming together and bringing uniformity to this particular section of codified law. I will stand by. If there are any questions, vote green.
Further remarks? House Bill 1070. Representative Hanoff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question for the sponsor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. In going through this, I saw there's a new, is there a permissive language that allows the sale of, I'm not sure if it's packaged alcohol on holidays now, if a local entity, I thought I saw that in the bill.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to refer my remarks to Representative over there, standing up from Hughes County.
Very good. Representative Rounds.
And thank you for the question. There are a few substance changes in the bill, and this is one of them. I think it's section 47 that addresses this. Right now, if you're a municipality or a county, you have to opt in to allow Sunday sales and Memorial Day sales and Christmas Day and Memorial Day sales of alcohol. What this does is it allows the municipalities that ability without having to opt in. They can do it. They can opt out. It gives the local community, the local county, the local entity that option to allow Sunday sales or Memorial Day sales and Christmas Day sales. And then it also, there's a couple other substance changes. One of them is eliminates the solicitor and dispenser. That one's got a little issue with myself on it, and I think it's something we'll address over on the other side. And then it also deals with those who can serve alcohol. There's always been a discussion, and I know for years we've debated who can serve it in a restaurant, on-sale facility. It clears that up, and there wasn't any opposition to that. It just clears it up, and I can't remember the section that it's in. We got 80 sections to this bill, folks. But other than that, most of this is general cleanup, just like we heard from the good representative from Walworth County. It's about 93%, 94% cleanup, and this is statutes that were written in the mid-1930s. Some of it hasn't been changed since then, so it needed cleaning. Does that answer your question, Representative?
Representative Hunoff, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It does, but now it raises a second one. Can you please define what about the servers? What are you saying on that change? You know, I apologize, but, you know, if there's, to those that are in the business, it might be of interest and to go through. So if you could just, on the servers. Thank you.
Representative Rounds, you don't have to answer that.
I can answer that, but I got to find the section and what it does.
Oh,
the good representative from Minnehaha's got the answer.
Just to be clear that Representative Hunoff, you're not serving beer while you're being a nurse. Representative Steinauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I served on the summer group. I wasn't on the cleanup portion of it. And I want to thank the chairman of Commerce and Energy, because we spent a full day going through this 60-some page bill, and we also had other separate meetings, so it's very good. Now to the question that the good representative from Yankton asked, basically what we're trying to do is it's related to the both on-sale and off-sale licenses that you have to have someone, you can sell it if you're 18 to 20 years old, if less than 50% of your gross sales come from the sale of alcohol, or that the licensee or somebody at least 21 years of age is on the premises. So, and this was kind of because we were hearing some things, especially from grocery stores, you know, you're waiting forever for them to run and find the person that's 21 to scan your one item. As long as there's someone there supervising that person that's 18 to 21, they would be able to sell alcohol. So it was a good cleanup in that regard, and I think accommodates what most of us might like to see happen, but doesn't take the responsibility still away from those selling on and off sale. In general, I thought the Department of Revenue did a great job, and again, I want to thank the chairman for giving the bill so much time.
Further remarks? Mr. Speaker. Representative Otten.
Just a quick question. What section is that? So we can actually read it.
Representative
Please.
Steinauer. Representative Rounds, go ahead.
You'll find the changes for those who can serve in sections 86, 87, and 88.
Representative Ott, the floor is yours. Further remarks? Representative Haggard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As usual, I'm opposed to alcohol bills generally, but this in sections 86, 7, and 8 do speak to that issue as to individuals under 21 years of age being allowed to further these sales. And I think it's important to understand that. There's a reason why we have the liquor laws as they are, and this bill provides that the individuals who are under 21 years of age could still engage in the sale as they're working there. They could engage in the sale of these products simply if there's someone who's 21 years of age simply on the premises. They don't have to be supervising per se. They don't have to be involved in the sale at all. They just have to be on the premises. So I think our law is appropriate the way it is, and I'd urge the body to oppose this. Thank you.
Further remarks? Representative Beal? Nope, just stretching. Anyone else? Representative Rounds.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, the one section that we're talking, 86, 87, 88, deals with, yes, an adult between the ages of 18 and 20 working in a business that's under 50% alcohol sales, mainly a restaurant type setting, can deliver and make that delivery, that sale to somebody in the restaurant there. They are subject to the laws just like everybody, all adults. If they serve to an underage individual, or if they consume that product, laws in South Dakota say they can be arrested for this. So really the protections are there. If they sell to an underage person, they've got issues that they have to deal with. If they consume alcohol before they're the age of 21, they've got issues they have to deal with. They are adults. Let's keep that in mind. At age 18, you are considered an adult in this state. We're going to deal with that later in some other pieces of legislation. Let's keep that in mind. This clarifies it. This makes it simple, especially for the retailers out there that are dealing with, you know, every day they get questions at the South Dakota retailers and in Department of Revenue, who can sell? This clarifies it. As long as there's somebody 21 years of age on the premises, yes, they're being overseen. It's just one small piece of this bill. There's sections of this bill I'm questioning. I want to see this bill come through. There's 65 pages, a number of sections in this bill. It's cleanup. It's badly needed. We can fix this. I plan on doing some repairs over in the Senate side on some areas. Minor repairs. Let's move this bill along. I think if there is some real bad feeling on allowing an adult to do, the sale, fine, let's fix it, but let's not kill a bill that's, 65 pages that a lot of time and effort went into. Thank you.
Very good. Representative Ketwick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had the pleasure of serving on this committee as well in the general sense. I wasn't on the actual cleanup of this chapter, but one of the main goals that we had the entire time that we sat there and talked about alcohol laws in South Dakota was to try and reduce confusion and to try and make it much more understandable to the average person that's looking. There's nothing in here that takes away the authority of the municipality or the issuing party on these licenses to enact a law that will restrict this further if that's what the community wants. As a city administrator, the reason I like it that way is because I understand my laws. But when I can't figure out what the state law says, it becomes much more of a hassle when people are coming and asking me questions. If we open it up generally and let the municipalities and the counties do their thing and restrict it the way they want it to be restricted, it becomes way easier to administer down at the local level. I urge your green vote on this, and we can work on fixing it.
Further remarks? Seeing no further remarks, the question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1070. All those members in favor shall vote yes. All those opposed, no. The clerk will unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote.
Duval votes aye. Representatives Heineman and Carr. Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were yeas 63, nays 5, and excused 2.
House Bill 1070, having received the majority vote of the members-elect, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1060, an act to authorize the South Dakota Building Authority and the Board of Regents to finance, design, and renovate the Dakota Dome at the University of South Dakota and to make an appropriation therefor.
House Bill 1060, having received its second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. This bill authorizes the South Dakota Building Authority and the Board of Regents to finance the renovation of the dome on the campus of the University of South Dakota. The Dakota Dome, as you well know, has been the hub of University of South Dakota sports activities for the last 40 years. And it also serves as the place where high school football championships are played every fall, in addition to dozens of other community activities during the year. But it is 40 years old, and it's due for renovation. This update would involve mechanical and electrical replacements, HVAC, plumbing, fire alarm systems, restroom facilities, lighting and sound, locker rooms, meeting rooms, coaching rooms, and support spaces. There also is getting to be some problems following fire code requirements that desperately need to be updated. The funding for this project will come from 3 sources. It's about a $26.32 million project. $5.4 million of that will come from the Higher Education Facility Funds, the HEF funds. Another $6.4 million will come from the university's capital funds. And the final $4.5 million will be from bond proceeds. And those proceeds, the debts will be serviced with private fund commitments from the USD Foundation. So I would encourage your support of this, and we'll update this iconic 40-year-old facility.
Very good. House Bill 10, or further remarks? Seeing none, House Bill 1060, having had its second reading, is up for final passage. All those members in favor shall vote yes. All those opposed, no. Due to the appropriation, this is a 2/3 vote. All those members in favor, please vote aye. Those opposed, no. Madam Clerk, please unlock the voting machine.
Roden votes aye. Beal excused. Representative Smith. Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were yeas 63, nays 4, and excused 3.
House Bill 1060, having received the 2/3 vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1061, an act to authorize the Board of Regents to contract for the construction of 2 athletic and recreation fields and related structures at Northern State University, to make an appropriation therefore and to declare an emergency.
House Bill 1061, having had a second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Bartles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. This bill authorizes a project to construct 2 synthetic turf fields, a pavilion, and a restroom facility at Northern State University. A 2-story pavilion will be built between 2 athletic fields, which will house locker rooms for the women's soccer team, a training room, some storage, coaches' offices, fan concessions, and media space and meeting rooms on the 2nd floor. Currently, they have 1 practice field for football at Northern State University, and that is being, as this summer, will be the site of the new construction for the Regional Science Education Center at NSU, which we authorized last year. So there will not be a football practice field. Currently, there are 2 soccer fields. One is used for practice and one is used for games. On this site, they will construct the football practice field and a new regulation size soccer field, which we currently don't have. Both fields will be artificial turf because they will be used quite extensively. They will also be available for general student population use for intramurals and other recreational events, outdoor classrooms, exercise, science, and education wellness. The School for the Blind and the Visually Impaired, which we'll be talking about later, will be built adjacent to these fields as well, and they will be utilizing the area. The turf fields are necessary as they will be used on a daily basis during the athletic season, and that's what we need to get them to hold up. The soccer team currently practices on 1 field and competes on the 2nd field, and they'll be going to 1 field, thus they need a turf field as well. The fan seating and pavilions, the lighting, and the small restroom facility located in the field will make accessible for fans and players. The entire complex will be enclosed by an attractive fencing to secure the premises and control access to the fields. The funding for this project includes other fund expenditure of $6 million from private gifts donated for this purposes and $303,314 in higher education facility funds, maintenance, and repairs fills. The fields and the pavilions will be built on land owned by Northern State, and a part of the soccer field will actually be located on City of Aberdeen land where there's been an easement placed so it can be a regulation-sized field. I will stand by for questions.
Further remarks? Seeing none, the question before the body is final passage, House Bill 1061. This is a 2/3 vote due to the appropriation. All those members in favor will vote yes. Those opposed, no. The clerk will unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote.
Dennett's aye. Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were yeas 54, nays 13, and excused 3.
House Bill 1061, having received the 2/3 vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1062, an act to authorize the Board of Regents to purchase unimproved real property in Brown County, to make an appropriation therefore, and to declare an emergency.
House Bill 1062, having had a second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Carson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 1062's authorized Northern to acquire an unimproved real estate property in Aberdeen. The property in question is a narrow strip of land, 53 feet wide by 746 feet long, approximately 1.86 of an acre. The lot currently is owned by the foundation. Northern State University owns the property that borders it on the west. South Dakota School for the Blind and Visibly Impaired owns the property that owns on the east. Northern State University plans on building a parking lot on this property. Estimated cost to acquire this property is $25,000. A gift donated to the university for this purpose has been secured. The land was appraised at $25,500. Stand by for any questions.
Further remarks? Seeing none, the question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1062. Oh, Representative Haugard.
Question for the sponsor.
Go ahead and state your question.
Just wondering if there's an identified cost for the creation of the parking lot.
Representative Carson, you want to answer that?
Could I have the question again?
He wants to know if you know how much the parking lot's going to cost.
I do not.
Further remarks? Seeing none, the question before the body is final passage, House Bill 1062. This is a 2/3 vote due to the appropriations. All those members in favor vote yes, those opposed no. Clerk will unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote.
Heineman votes aye. Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were yeas 55, nays 12, and excused 3.
House Bill 1062, having received the 2/3 vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1065, an act to authorize the Board of Regents to contract for the design, renovation of, and addition to the National Music Museum in Vermillion, and to make an appropriation therefore.
House Bill 1065, having had a second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Honhoff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. We are such a musical group. I am hoping to have you play right into the passage of this bill. House Bill 1065 is brought to you by the Board of Regents, and the intent is for the design and renovation of an addition to the National Music Museum on the campus of USD. It was founded in 1973, and it is a center for study of the history of musical instruments, and it is one of the great institutions of its kind in the world. It has renowned collections, which include more than 14,800 American, European, non-Western instruments, and virtually all cultures and historical periods are most inclusive everywhere. In addition, they're going to improve the exhibits, the lobby, the performance and meeting and education spaces, and also there's some infrastructure with the HVAC system is in significant need of upgrading to protect the integrity of the collection. A preliminary design and cost estimate has been done. There is an appropriation of $7.7 million, which are coming from donations from donors, and $1.5 million from HEF funds. Initially, the project is tentatively scheduled to start on the summer of 2019 and completed in the fall of 2020. And as I told President Abbott, he got my vote because I asked him, do you have a duda? And a duda is a check instrument, and he assured me that he did. So I would please ask you to support this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Further remarks? Representative Gosh.
Question for the sponsor.
Well, go ahead.
Thank you. Do we know what the operating budget is for this annually?
Mr. Speaker, I do not have an answer for that question.
Very good.
Follow-up?
Go ahead.
Do we know how much is brought in on fees or entrance tickets?
Mr. Speaker, I apologize again. I did not ask that question. I guess the question would be with revenue producing, if there are classrooms in that space, which I believe there are no revenue producing dollars that would go to support for that facility. That would come out of M&R.
Thank you.
Representative Zickman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, having been a parent that had 2 daughters and all my money go to USD, I really am in favor of this one-of-a-kind building and facility, etc. I think it's very, very good, very positive for the state of South Dakota. And I would like to recommend to all of you, and all of you USD grads, to go ahead and support this. Thank you.
Further remarks? Representative Ring. Oh, there's someone that might, yes. Those economics professors wander over to the Music Museum. Representative Ring.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have been there. I just had to stand and say this really is a nationally known, nationally respected, incredible facility. And I've heard a little bit about the plans that they have for the improvement. There's going to be an addition to the structure, I believe. A lot of changes need to be made just to protect the integrity of the collection. And so I too want to encourage everybody to support this. There are classrooms there. They do offer degrees that are nearly unique because of the collection that they're able to use and so forth. And so, yes, I have been there. I have been through it several times. There are fees collected now. When I first came here, it was free. Now I have to pay for it. And I would guess that some of the operating costs are probably covered from just charitable contributions from supporters. And there are supporters all over the world. When I first came here, it was in the days when you still wrote letters. I wrote a letter to a friend of mine who was working at the Yale Music Library. She already knew all about this. Unfortunately, I've never been able to get her to come out here to see it, but it is a nationally known institution, and please support it.
Further remarks? Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask that you vote no on this. We lament that we don't have enough revenue for this. Our students are paying too much in fees, and yet here we are supporting a museum. I have also been there, and there was no one else there when my boys and I were there. It may be a nationally known museum, but I don't think it's a nationally visited museum. At some point, we need to say enough is enough and draw the line on what tax dollars, student fees, what we're demanding that state government support. If this is such a nationally renowned museum, and it may be a great museum, it was nice, it was fine, then it should be able to support itself with incoming revenue. And I would ask you to ask you to vote no on this.
Representative Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and the members of the committee. Well, I guess I would dispute the previous speaker's characterization of it. Both of my daughters were musicians, and I will tell you that this is a national museum. People come literally all over the world to come to it. During the time that the previous speaker may have been there, may have been a few people there. But I've gone to Vermillion several times, and there's buses loads of kids that come. So not only is it a tourism attraction, but it also is an educational attraction as well. You know, it has 2 or 3 Stradivariuses in it. It has numerous cellos going back to the 1500s. It has instruments literally across the world. Professor Arnie Larson and his son have really put together something over the years that they've donated lots of time. There's been lots of donations to this. I know individuals who serve on this board are nationally acclaimed as it relates to instruments in that regard. And so this is something that I think is important. I think it's something that draws people, but more importantly, I think it's an educational tool, not only from the college standpoint, but also from the high school and the elementary school level. And this is something that we really should support. You know, we've spent a lot of money on athletic type of things, and this is a fine arts type of thing that I think is something that we need to be supportive of. So I'd ask that you vote green on this.
Further remarks? Representative Hunoff. Does anyone else want to speak for a first time before Representative Hunoff speaks for a second time? Go ahead, Representative Hunoff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. Certainly I can appreciate the good comments that were made and the concerns about funding these projects and the priority. But I think the last speaker probably typified it for me in the sense, this place is used by students, by music students, by our children to excel. And that is part of the experience and part of the musicians that we send out of the University of South Dakota that relocate in our communities, able to share their talent. Keep in mind that the majority of the funding, the 7.7, is private donations, no state dollars, and the other is the HEF funds at 1.5. And again, those rooms used for students, our classrooms are no different than on our other university settings and our buildings there. So again, I say thank you for the discussion, and I hope you can support the bill.
Seeing no further remarks, the question before the body is final passage. House Bill 1065, due to an appropriation, this is a 2/3 vote. All those members in favor will vote yes. Those opposed, no. Clerk will unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote.
Representative Carr. Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were yeas 51, nays 17, and excused 2.
House Bill 1065, having received the 2/3 vote to the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1071, an act to authorize the relocation of the School for the Blind and the Visually Impaired and the transfer of its existing real estate and facilities to Northern State University, to authorize actions necessary to accomplish that relocation and transfer, to protect the permanent endowment trust through exchanges of real estate and facilities, to appropriate funds, and to declare an emergency.
House Bill 1071, having had a second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Allers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the body. This bill authorizes the construction of a new facility for the South Dakota School for the Blind and Visually Impaired on the current site of Jerde Hall at NSU. The estimated cost of the new facility is $13.5 million, and the fund source is entirely raised by donations to the NSU Foundation. Because this because this will involve multiple trusts, the bill authorizes the Board of Regents to swap Jurdy Hall, which is trust land, with Wolves Memorial Suites, which is non-trust land on the NSU campus. It will then demolish Jurdy Hall at a cost of $242,775 payable from those donations. Build a new facility for the South Dakota School for the Blind and Visually Impaired at the Jurdy Hall site, and then transfer that trust to the Jurdy Hall site, and then transfer the current South Dakota School for the Blind and Visually Impaired property to NSU. So why is it necessary? The current facility is more than 55 years old, and it occupies 65,000 square feet on 10 acres and requires significant investments in maintenance and repair and much needed renovations, things like rewiring the building and HVAC, not to mention the grounds are quite large and it requires a lot of maintenance there. The new facility will be smaller. It will be about 50,000 square feet, occupying 3.5 acres. The new facility will have central air and will be a LEED certified building. It will be more energy efficient because it meets the LEED standards. The current facility is not accurately or adequately wired for all the technology utilized today for the students. With the new facility, a smaller footprint and less outdoor space to maintain, the cost of maintenance will be reduced. And just in case anybody's curious, the operational budget for the South Dakota School for the Blind and Visually Impaired was $3.25 million in fiscal year 17. The budget for this year is $3.7 million, and the agency request for next year is $3.6 million, which is a reduction of $123,000.
Further remarks? Yes, Representative Latterell.
Question for the sponsor.
Go ahead and state your question.
I attended this university and I often saw the campus that you're talking about, and I noticed that it does have a lot of land and there's also some outdoor activities there. So I wanted to know if you had in the testimony heard how they would accommodate that at the new site, because as I can tell, it's not as many square footage if there's going to be outdoor activities.
Representative Allers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the question. Yes, the current site will still have playgrounds and outdoor activity areas for the students at the South Dakota School for the Blind and Visually Impaired.
Representative Greenfield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When I found out that we were possibly going to be talking about the School for the Visually Handicapped in the future, which now is today, I got a hold of the administrator, Marge Kaiser, because I'm very sensitive in, how will this affect the students? That was my main concern. And these are some of the things that she said would be benefits in addition to what Representative Allers said. He mentioned the wiring. They are using increased amount of technology in the School for the Blind. It says that the students regularly use technology, including magnification devices, computers, iPads, and smart braille writers in their classrooms. It will have both stairs and an elevator, which will help the students learn necessary skills for independent travel on a daily basis. It says it's a more realistic teaching environment that way. It'll be air conditioned to have a better airflow to make the summer program more comfortable. Window air conditioners have currently been used, but some areas, including the gym, do not have air conditioning, so they are not usable when it's hot. And the dorms are difficult to cool properly. Also, it helps them to regulate the lighting to have a new building. It says that some of the students actually are photophobic, and so it's important to be able to adjust the environment to their needs. It will use materials for flooring and walls that will enhance students' wayfinding skills through tactile and acoustic markers. And it says that they would be then in a practical and efficient learning environment for many, many years to come. The downside that they mentioned was leaving a place with which they are familiar and which holds many happy memories. But they're looking forward to making this transition, and the students also will be involved in the building process so that they can better become accustomed to finding their way around efficiently once it's built. So I would encourage a green vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks? Representative Rounds,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A question for the sponsor.
go ahead and state your question.
Have the sponsors of this legislation looked into, well, let's go back a couple years ago when we integrated the students for the School for the Deaf back to their local school districts. Have the sponsors looked into integrating students, School for the Blind, back into their local school districts instead of building a new building and having a school?
Representative Allers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the question. Actually, yes, they have, but due to the unique collaboration between NSU and the School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, they have programs there where the students at the school interact with students at NSU that are learning as special ed teachers and specifically in the field of the blind and education. So to do so would have a negative impact on the program at NSU, as well as displace some of those people that work at the school there, and it just doesn't work well. I had asked the question myself about combining the two special schools, and the numbers didn't work that way, and it doesn't work with the programs.
Further remarks? Seeing none. Question for the body is final passage, House Bill 1071. This is a 2/3 vote due to the appropriation. All those members in favor shall vote yes. All those opposed, no. The clerk will unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote. You vote.
Gaush votes aye. Representative Johns. Representative Johns votes aye. Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were yeas 65, nays 3, and excused 2.
House Bill 1071, having received the vote of 2/3 of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1190, an act to revise the time period for which certain motor vehicle license plates are used.
House Bill 1190, having had its second reading, it's only a second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Seeing none. Representative Freimüller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll give her back her glasses. I don't need them any longer. I'm asking you to please support House Bill 1190 regarding extending the length of our license plates. Prior to this cycle of license plates, the previous cycle was 10 years. This was changed, and we are now back to a 5-year schedule. Reissuance expenses of our license plates cost $8.4 million. If we vote today to go back to a 10-year cycle, we save $6.2 million, and that savings goes back to our counties to apply to the Roads and Bridges Fund. After doing some research on other states, it appears we all use the same supplier of the light reflecting sheeting that goes over the plate. Again, this same sheeting lasted us over 10 years on the previous cycle. Just making sure you heard that. You have on your desks pictures of license plates that don't look readable. If you have a license plate that looks that bad, and it could be a safety issue, you need to replace it. Wyoming's plates last 8 years with no problem according to their production manager, and Iowa's plates are good for 10 years. Ours can last longer than 5. This is a big contract for the supplier, and I understand why they are opposing the bill. But ultimately, we work for our citizens. If we can put 6.2 million back into our county's budget fund to work on roads and bridges, we need to do just that. Thank you.
Further remarks? Representative Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've heard this bill argued in committee, and I just want to kind of put a few things into perspective. 10 years is an awfully long time for a plate to be on the back of a vehicle. If you're involved with agriculture at all, we tend to drive through cornfields, we hit curbs, we back into trailers. 10 years is a long time, and perhaps we need to defer this bill for another year or two. We just got new license plates within the last couple of years. Let's come up with a compromise. I don't have an amendment at this time, but I think 10 years is just too long, but we can bring this bill back again next year perhaps.
Further remarks? Representative Marty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a comment. My brother-in-law lives in, am I on? lives in Minnesota, Minneapolis area. And he's had his on there for more than 10 years, and it's their responsibility when it gets so bad they have to replace him. So I would encourage you to support this. This is a good bill, a money-saving bill. Thank you.
Very good. Representative Barthel, did you want to say something?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also stand in opposition to this bill. As a former law enforcement officer, there's really two reasons that you have a license plate. One is to signify that you pay the proper tax on your vehicle, and the other is to identify that vehicle. Other than that, they're just for looks. But I think it's imperative that we have plates that are clearly visible. There's a reason that it's written into statute that they be of a reflective nature and that lasts for at least 5 years. I understand that there are cases where maybe that could be extended, but for the safety of the officers and the people that are trying to identify these drivers, I think it's important that we have a plate that's clearly visible. I too agree that perhaps there's a compromise somewhere in between there, but I think 10 years is too long to wait. Thank you.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to go to Jensen, then we'll come back to you guys. Representative Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question for the sponsor.
State your question.
If do we have a process right now to replace our own plates if they're damaged, correct?
Representative Freimüller, go ahead. Yeah, turn on your microphone so I can hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We do. If you damage your own license plates and they can't read them, that's your responsibility. That's not everybody else's. We don't all have to replace ours because you didn't take care of yours. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, I want to make sure that if we have a foreign plate that's damaged, we can replace it if we want to.
Absolutely, and I believe there's a minimal charge. I'm not sure what it is, but some states are $5, some states are $6. To my knowledge, somebody else is looking that up for me right now. Thank you.
You bet. Anything further, Representative Jensen?
Just a quick comment on that. Thank you. No more question. Can I make a comment on that? I guess I would like to see us in the future, and this is the comment, make plates that are easier to read than the ones we have now.
All right, Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few states. I briefly looked up what other states do. Washington in 2015 stopped mandatory replacement of their license plates. Maryland used to mandate replacement every 5 years, but they haven't done that since 1986. Massachusetts, all plates issued since 1978 are still valid. In 2016, Texas no longer required new plates to be issued every 7 years. California, all plates issued since 1963 are still valid. I would suggest it is time that we move into the 21st century. If our vendor can't give us plates that last longer than 10 years, then we need to get a new vendor. All of these states, and it is a trend, more and more states are going away from the mandatory replacement of the plates to save money. And they're putting it onto the driver to replace their plates if they get lost, stolen, or damaged. So I think we need to go the way of everyone else. We have spent a lot of money here today already with ongoing M&R expenses. So I would suggest this is, yay, we can save money here, so vote yes.
Representative DeSanto,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question for the sponsor, please.
go ahead and state your question.
I'm wondering what type of opposition there were, if there was any in committee, and what their specific concerns were.
Representative Freimuther.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the question. The opposition basically was the sheeting on the front of the license plate maybe wouldn't last longer for light reflectiveness more than 5 years, but previous to this cycle we're on now, we had them for 10 years, our license plates, and I never heard a single problem about any sheeting. It was about design. They wanted a design change this last time, and I believe that's in the bill. I'm not 100% positive. And then the other one was safety, 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 safety. If you've got a bad license plate, you need to change it. And if an officer pulls up behind you, their lights are going to shine on that license plate. So to me, this is all about the contract, because if it's $8.4 million every time we do it, in 10 years, that's $16.8 million. So, I mean, this is a big contract. So I would highly, highly ask you to please support this to save money for our taxpayers and put that money that we can spend in a better place back to the counties for our Roads and Bridges Fund. Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to go to, we got a real talker on our hands here. So, Lesmeister, Roden, Reed, we looking for new information. Representative, who'd I call on? Lesmeister? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to clear up some of the questions that were asked here already. I sit on the Transportation Committee when this was heard. I directly asked the question, can you not make a sheeting that would last longer than 5 years? The answer given was, by statute of South Dakota law, we are only required to make it last 5 years. Never did say that he could not. Where do the savings go? As a good representative from Custer County stated, it goes back to the county's Bridge and Roads Fund. I think that's huge. I do believe she has a number of $6.2 million in a 5-year cycle, or 10-year cycle. Oh, 5-year cycle, corrected me, thank you. That this would go back. Third thing was, it's proof that you've paid your due taxes on your plates. I do believe that's that little tag or sticker they call it that tells you whether you paid your taxes or not, and that is paid every single year. So nothing's changing there. So just to clear up some of the information here, and I hope it helped, but I hope you support this bill. I really do think it is a good bill. This company that builds these plates literally can put stuff on the space shuttle, get the moon and back. I think they can build a sticker to last, or a sheeting last 10 years. Thank you.
Representative Roden.
Thank you. Very briefly, I would just remind you where we're at in this process. I've heard some of the opposition say, well, we should fix this. Let's take our time and fix it. We have the opportunity through the process, vote this up or down. If it passes, do your fixing in the Senate side. Bring your bills to committee where we have the chance to have the people there that have the answers instead of guessing at it here. That's part of the process. I believe this is just common sense legislation. I was thinking about this sitting here. I don't know how many thousands of times I drive through the old Homestead's house where my '67 Chevy is sitting in the weeds every night when I check cows, and I can read that license plate perfectly. And I don't know how many decades old it is. This is common sense. Vote it up or down and send it to the Senate.
Further remarks? Representative Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think one thing that we need to remember is that we're in this 5-year, our licenses aren't that old. We're just getting started with that. So these licenses are set up for 5 years. I don't disagree that if you were to put specs out there that said we want 10-year plates, a company may be able to do that for us, and then we'd know. Secondly, when we talk about public safety, and I did several ride-alongs when I was mayor of Brookings, and the first thing they do in approaching a vehicle is get that license plate number and get it called in so they know what they're approaching. You do that right away. Sometimes you don't have the opportunity to get up close. But when they do, they know if there could be a problem as it's approaching the vehicle. So this is a public safety issue. Not disagreeing there isn't something that should be done in the future, but this bill should be defeated.
Representative Clark, and then Duval.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I got a voice amendment.
Oh, good. Go ahead and state your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Page 1, line 6, strike 10-year and replace it with 7-year.
That's the amendment. Is there a second? Second. Go ahead and,
And
oh.
page 1, line
Yeah.
14,
Yeah,
replace the 10-year with 7-year.
okay, that, is the second good with that? Representative Kaiser? Or who is that, who seconded it? Is that Zickman? Representative Zickman, okay. Okay, that is the amendment, very good. Line 6, change the 10 to 7. Line 14, change the 10 to 7. Okay, Representative Clark, give it your best shot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. According to 3M, the sheeting is only guaranteed to 5 years. And I think 5 years is too short, but 10 years is too long. So as a reasonable compromise, we'll go for 7 years. And then in 7 years, if we need to change it, we can.
Very good. Further remarks? Seeing none. Oh. Representative Zickman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, to me, it looks like we have so many different things with the licenses, et cetera, because most of you know I have 3 bills in this year for license plates. So somewhere along the line, we're going to have to look at getting together in the summer or whatever to look at all the license plates and licensing that we have for our vehicles. And the other thing that I think that we're going to have to look at, and it's coming, folks, is going to one plate only, rear plate only, one plate eventually. So I think, Mr. Speaker, we're going to hopefully maybe put in summer steady if possible. So that's my recommendation. But it is, other than that, with the 7, I think it's a good bill.
All right, we are on the amendment. So let's just real briefly dispose of the amendment. No one else wants to talk, so Representative Freiemuller is going to talk, then we're going to vote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is this, I believe, is an
Just
unfriendly?
on the amendment, it's up to you. It's changing your 10 years to 7. What do you want us to do?
I would like you to not support that because just think of all the tourists that come from all other states across our great nation. They're not South Dakota license plates. These are license plates that come from all across the country, and we don't know how long those are on. So I do not think 10 years is unreasonable. Like I say, the previous cycle, our plates lasted 10 years. This is a huge savings. I would urge you to resist the amendment and leave it at 10 years because we know 10 years has worked. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further remarks, the question before the body is Representative Clark's voice amendment, which is to change on line 6 and line 14, the number 10 to the number 7. All those members in favor of such amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no? No! That motion fails. All right, any further remarks on the bill? Now this one's about talked out, guys. We're going to let Representative Duval go, then we're going to let Freiemuller close it, and we're going to vote. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. We have heard concerns this afternoon about the reflectivity of the sheeting. We've heard concerns about the durability of aluminum plates, especially in ranch country. In committee, it was testified that Nebraska is on a 6-year cycle. Minnesota, 7 years. Wyoming, 8 years. Iowa, 10 years. So I think there really are valid questions about whether 10 years is the right length of time. Our next reissue of plates will be in 2021. That means we have 2 additional legislative sessions to make sure that we come up with the right number. So I would ask you to please vote no today and then let us research and come in with a bill next year that has the right number in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Freiemuller, closing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The good representative from Brown County let me know that it's already a crime if your license plate is not readable. It's already a crime, so he does have that. Again, we have vehicles that come here from states all across this country, and we don't know what the length is on their license plates. I would ask you to remember, this is about money as well. It is not to me a safety issue because you are in charge of your own license plate. We can't babysit everybody. So I would ask you to please pass this bill and let's move it to the Senate, like the good representative from Union Center said, and thank you very much.
Seeing no further remarks, the question before the body is final passage, House Bill 1190. All those members in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed, no. Clerk will unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote. Thanks for bringing them up. Yes, good.
Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
House Bill 11, Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were yeas 41, nays 27, excused 2.
House Bill 1190, was this a two-thirds? Is this a... House Bill 1190, having received the majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1205, an act to require certain health benefit plans to provide coverage to medically compromised persons for certain dental care services.
All right, House Bill 1205, having had a second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Heineman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will attempt to make this brief. This bill in front of you is kind of a if you will, a compromise between the various stakeholders. The problem we have before us, and most of you probably are aware of it now, but it presented in committee, patient comes into my office, they have severe medical problems. I would recommend they be placed into a hospital or a surgical setting. Their health benefit plans typically do not cover that procedure, the medical side, with a couple of exceptions. If they're under 5 years of age or they're severely disabled in some way, shape, or form. Medicaid covers this procedure, but certain health benefits do not. So this bill would address that. Again, it does three things. It adds the medical condition that places the person at serious medical risk in our code. It requires third-party payers to pay for that category. And the third thing it does on page 2 is it's a new section that provides for the third-party payers to help them in the implementation process so they don't have to alter their contracts with their particular benefit holders. So again, this was a compromise between the various stakeholders. If you look, you can see that it was amended extensively prior to and when we got into committee. But all of those stakeholders have agreed now with this wording, and I would urge your support. The committee voted 11-0 to support this, so please vote green. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks? See no further remarks. Question before the body is final passage, House Bill 1205. All those members in favor shall vote aye. All those opposed, no. The clerk will unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote.
Allers, aye. Rasmussen, aye. Representative Diedrich. Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were yeas 68, 2 excused.
House Bill 1205, having received the majority vote of the members elected, is hereby declared passed. Representative Heineman,
I have an amendment to the title.
is that 1205 CTA?
It is.
Do you wish to move it at this time?
I do.
All in favor or discussion?
Go ahead. It's just a changing in the words in the title.
Very good. Any questions on that title amendment? Seeing none. All those members in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The title is so amended.
House Bill 1179, an act to provide for permanent daylight savings time.
House Bill 1179, having had a second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Latterell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, House members. House Bill 1179, a slow crawl toward ending daylight savings time. Why am I bringing this bill? You might think to yourself, this is one of those bills, we really don't have time for this. But it turns out it's one of the most requested bills that we as legislators get from our constituents. I know that our Attorney General, Marty Jackley, had posted a request on his page. What is the #1 bill that you guys want to see dealt with this legislative session? And overwhelmingly, the comments were, please stop that switching of daylight savings time. Please stop it. There was a poll done, a national poll of folks, and included over 1,000 adults. 4% margin of error, and it turns out 74% of people support getting rid of the switch to and from daylight savings time. And another interesting note that came up in that survey was that they do want to end the switching, but they want to keep the daylight saving time permanent, because it turns out that we like the benefits of daylight saving time, but we don't like the drawbacks of switching back and forth. So that's what House Bill 1179 does in its current form. It ends daylight saving time, but it keeps daylight saving time permanent. So we stop switching back and forth. And the other part, the last part of the bill, is the most important part. We recognize that we can't just go up and switch things when our neighboring states are still using daylight saving time. So this bill only takes effect when the 6 surrounding states also end daylight savings time. South Dakotans agree that this is something that we need to stop. It's not just a national poll. I did some perusing on Facebook comments, and I'll just read you a couple of quotes here. I think some of them are humorous. Brady from Rapid City says, "It would be great to either keep it full-time or get rid of it full-time. This going back and forth twice a year is confusing for some, and there have been a number of studies indicating with our 24-hour world, daylight saving time is actually detrimental to the economy." Rosa Lee says, "I wish South Dakota kept daylight saving time and not have to be changing our clocks back and forth." Mark from Rapid City says, "Yes, SD, please, and make state same darn time zone too." Gillian from Lemon says, "Standard or daylight saving, I don't care, but leave it one way or the other." 3 exclamation points. And Joan from Huron, "If the states around South Dakota do not switch, the time change just crossing the border would be a real burden," which is why you see this bill only takes effect when the surrounding states do the same. The point here is to send a message to the other states and to the federal government that we want to move in this direction because we're tired of switching back and forth. Now, a lot of people think that when we originally did daylight saving time, it was because the farmers wanted it, but that's actually a myth. Farmers don't generally like daylight saving time. That was something that was started to get it passed. There are many benefits that we did receive, such as the body receiving more sunlight, more emotional health, people being able to golf after work, do more commerce. So there are some benefits to keeping the daylight saving time longer, but there are also some drawbacks from switching back and forth. And it also turns out there isn't really an energy savings when you go back and forth with daylight saving time as it was originally hoped, because it turns out in places with air conditioning, they run their air conditioners longer to make up for any supposed benefits you'd receive from turning the lights off more. There's also some statistics that are pretty sound that show when the day of the switching, people lose about 40 minutes of sleep on average. The workplace accidents go up 6% in the day after the switch, and the car accidents go up 17%, and the heart attacks go up 25%. So basically, we want to get rid of these kind of effects that happen from the switching. The research also showed that the heart attack risk decreases when the clocks fall back, but my point is with all these different accidents and so on going together, we don't want to have a bunch of increased car accidents and a bunch of tired doctors with workplace accidents working on all those people in the car accidents. We have to stop the switching. So basically, that's the goal here, is to pass this bill, get it on the books, tell the other states, let's start moving in this direction. Stand by for any questions. I appreciate your support.
Representative Conzett.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. This is an interesting question, and I have to say in my 9 years, I've never once received anything about going to full-time. But I am intrigued by your proposal. The states that do make that comment that they're going to save energy when we leap ahead, Indiana did this in 2006, and researchers examined power use statistics. Consumption rate rose 1% overall, with a 2 to 4% increase during the fall months. And what this does is it aligns us by shifting our calendar forward, where we have the hottest part of the day, thus increased air conditioning costs, and then it aligns us in waking up in the dark, thus increasing, when we shift back, to more heating costs. One thing that really did intrigue me, and he did allude to this, is that when we're in daylight savings, crime rates do go down because potential victims tend not to go out in the dark. Thank you.
Were you for or against the bill? Undecided? Undecided, all right. Appreciate you weighing in. I thought maybe you were some of those Facebook comments under a pseudonym. Further remarks? Representative York. Go ahead and state your question.
I was just wondering, as long as we're waiting to see what the other states do, what if they all decide to go to standard, which I would prefer going to standard time instead of daylight savings? Would we at that time have to change what we're doing today to come in line with them? And I really do hate car accidents and heart attacks.
Representative Latteral.
Thank you. I appreciate the question, Representative. I do believe putting this on the books sends a message that's in line with the national polling. This shows this is what the majority of people want. And there are plenty of people, though, as you alluded to, that would just take it either way. And yes, I think it would be relatively easy just to change a couple of words and stay with standard time if that's the way we decide to go forward.
Further remarks? Representative Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. For those of you that were around like I was back in the days of Woodstock and watching man land on the moon live, you remember that at one time we tried this here in South Dakota. We went forward to keep daylight savings time year-round. And for those that remember that time, you remember the state of South Dakota came out to protect its children on their way to school in the mornings because it was so dark, and they made an investment in what they called hot dots. You put them on your clothing, on your books, on your book bag, so cars can see you as you're crossing the streets. What we're doing is we're moving that time forward so our children have to walk to school in the dark, for those that still walk. To me, it sends it's more of a safety issue to me to have that time still an hour back. I don't think we're ready to move permanently into the daylight savings time. It's for those of you who are up early like I am before noon, you'll know it's still dark if you, my watch is still set It's 5:32 according to my watch. I figured by the time I set it, I'm gonna have to set it back again, so that's a philosophy to save energy. But I think it's a safety issue.
Are you saying you've already personally implemented this?
I really do believe it's a safety issue for the kids walking to school in the morning, for those that do walk, even if it's a couple of blocks, they got to cross streets. It's dark, and I don't think we should move ahead with this. Thank you.
I was just checking for your birth date on your, but it's not there. Further remarks? Representative Clark? Yeah, nice to hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this is a good idea, but this is the wrong venue. Daylight savings times is a national program. It should be handled at the national level and not the state or the regional level.
All right. Seeing no further remarks, we'll have Representative Latterow close us out. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I certainly appreciate the comments of the two previous speakers, and especially the good representative from Hughes County mentioning the kids going to school in the dark. And I'll just relay a short conversation I had with a representative on the committee. And his comments were that although we are sending the kids to school in the dark, remember we're doing that a lot of the year anyway, and it's better to send kids to school in the dark than have them come home in the dark, because if something goes wrong, then you'll be able to take care of it while there's still daylight hours. But my real rebuttal to that point is that by the time this bill takes effect and the other states get around to it, your kids are going to be taken to school by autonomous drones. So wouldn't really worry about that. Thank you. Please support the bill.
House Bill 1179 is up for final passage. This is 2/3? No. Okay. All those members in favor vote yes. All those opposed, no. Clerk will unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote.
Representatives Diedrich and Rounds.
Is that a first time warning today?
Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there are yeas 34, nays 34, and excused 2.
House Bill 1179, having failed to receive the majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared failed. And I know it took every exercise of restraint in your body not to give notice of intent to reconsider, Representative Latterow.
House Bill 1195, an act to revise certain provisions regarding refunds of motor vehicle license fees.
House Bill 1195, having had a second reading, is up for consideration. Final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Qualm.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have an amendment.
Is it 1195 FB?
Yes, it is. It's been distributed.
You wish to move it at this time?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead. You may discuss the amendment in the bill.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker and members of the House, this is really a pretty simple bill. It has been brought to my attention that for the last 35 years, there has never been a refund made through the county treasurer or the Department of Revenue for an overpayment of a license fee that was paid in air. What this does, it changes the word may to shall, and then it puts in there, or for any motor vehicle license fee paid in air, they will give a refund. And then it also says no refund may be made unless the registration and stickers are returned unused, and they have to do this within 90 days. I think this makes a lot of sense. I don't know how much money there's been over these 35 years, but I'm guessing it's pretty substantial. And I've visited with more than one person that has said they've tried to get a refund because of a mistake that was made, and they just said, no, we don't do that. So I think it's time we change this. I think it's just a good government to return money that is not yours. It does not belong to the government. It belongs to the people. Thank you.
Further remarks? Representative Zickman.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen of the body, this is a great bill. I wish I'd have thought about it, because it's time that you get some of these people back in line and they start giving the money back where it's supposed to be given. So this is a good bill. I recommend your passage. Thank you.
Further remarks? Seeing none, the question before the body is adoption of Amendment 1195 FB. All those members in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Amendment carries. Further remarks, 1195 is amended. Seeing none, the question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1195 as amended. All those members in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Clerk will unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote. Some of you have been inquiring. I want you to know there's going to be some speakers in the restrooms here midweek this week. I know it's more important to some of you than others. I just want you to stay tuned. We have a potential third-time violator on a late vote today. Just stay tuned. Call the vote. Yeah.
Representative Glanzer and Representative Carr.
Wow. It's going to have to be a caucus discussion tomorrow, I think.
Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there is yeas 68, excused 2.
House Bill 1195, as amended, having received the majority vote of the members elected, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1186, an act to provide for the legislative review of the Board of Regents.
House Bill 1186, having had a second reading, is up for final consideration and debate. Are there any remarks?
Mr. Speaker?
Representative Peterson.
Thank you. Members of the House, House Bill 1186 is a bill that calls for a legislative review, much like a summer study, of the Board of Regents and its institutions every 5 years. Mr. Speaker, I forgot one thing. I have an amendment.
Okay, well, you just have your seat, mate. Yep. Is that amendment? Go ahead, Representative Willitson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have an amendment. It's 1186 ZA. I wish to move it at this time, and it has been distributed.
Okay, you defer your time to Representative Peterson.
Yes, please.
Representative Peterson, go ahead and discuss the amendment in the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will just start by briefly discussing the amendment. In conversations with the Board of Regents, they indicated that trying to start doing this year would be difficult, and we're reasonable, so we said, okay, well, let's just give you a year and we'll make the effective date next year. We'll make it 2019. So that's all that this amendment does. Last year, as we sat in the Appropriations Committee and a number of us asked questions, we were often told that these were good questions for a summer study. When the Executive Committee chose summer studies last year, this topic was one of the most popular. However, it just missed the cutoff to be chosen. This bill would provide for that type of study. What this bill is not is an attack on any university within the system, nor an attack on any university center or the Board of Regents as a whole. What this legislation would allow is the legislature to conduct its proper role of oversight of the Board of Regents and its institutions, and to partner with them in a changing education environment. The legislature rests a lot of authority in the Appropriations Committee, but the whole legislature should also be a bigger part of the vision of what the Board of Regents is doing. A few fun facts. Did you know that the Board of Regents' annual budget is $778 million? $778 million. $210 million of that is general funds, which is 13% of the state's total general fund budget. Did you know that South Dakota universities have some of the lowest operating costs in the region? We're doing a good job with that. But we also have some of the highest resident tuition in the region. Our universities have a combined total, as of fiscal year 17, of $88 million in uncommitted cash balances. These are just numbers. What we really need is more interaction with the Board of Regents, more analysis, and more ongoing vision and strategic plan communication. So if this has piqued your interest, I would encourage you to tune in to the House Education Committee recording today, where Monty Kramer from the Board of Regents gave a fabulous presentation on a number of additional facts and some really good analysis. This will give you a preview of what we could avail ourselves of if we pass this bill. We know that higher education is changing. Recently at our July meeting, the Board of Regents did not mention the pending closure of the Pierre University Center that was reported in the media the following week. I'm wondering if that building is now sitting empty. Maybe it's been repurposed. Those are things that we should be made aware of. We know the University Center in Sioux Falls is facing challenges. Last summer, there was a study to consider moving the law school to Sioux Falls. The point of this study is not only to look backward at the numbers as GOAC does, or consider current funding requests as the Appropriations Committee does, but to look forward at challenges and opportunities facing the universities, so we as the legislature can partner with the regents and help them realize their opportunities and manage their challenges. I would ask that you please vote green on House Bill 1186. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone want to talk just on this amendment? Let's dispose of the amendment first. See no other remarks on the amendment. The matter before you is Amendment 1186 ZA. All those members in favor of said amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Amendment carries. Representative Conzett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question for the sponsor.
Go ahead and state your question.
How do you see this laying out? Is there going to be elections to be on the committee? You said you want all legislators involved. Are we convening in the off months and coming to Pierre to listen and to have these reports presented to us?
Representative Peterson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill provides that this committee would be selected by the executive committee, and the executive committee could set the parameters. So much like a summer study, if someone is interested in that, they could just let that be known to the executive board, and the executive board would make that decision.
Representative Conzett?
No further questions, comments?
Go ahead.
This is already happening. It may not be us being involved with the future planning, but if the E-Board or Appropriations wanted to call in the Regents Inn, there's 2 avenues right there. And then I question creating a committee for, I believe it was 5 years, where we would have to convene in Pierre or maybe all over the state, thus digging deeper into the hole with transportation costs and hotels and everything like that. I just think the scope is just a little bit broader than I'm comfortable with.
Further remarks, Representative Hunhoff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. You know, I certainly applaud the intent of this bill to come forward, but I think the previous speaker aligned some things, and I hate to say history sometimes has a way to play in on how the process has been done prior to this. In 2013, there were 3 Senate bills, 3, 4, and 5, which required the Board of Regents to provide the Legislative Research Council with annual information on annual licensure exam outcomes, graduate placement outcomes, and general accountability performance measures. These parameters were later stipulated in the statute, and it was generated then a committee that was called the Council on Higher Education Policy Goals, Performance, and Accountability. The council met in the December of 13, 14, and 15, and the final report was reviewed by the council, and you can find it on the Board of Regents site. Then in the 2016 legislative session, there was the House Bill 1136, which eliminated that council, and it transferred the functions, which was the oversight for the Board of Regents, to the Legislative Planning Committee. And that summer, they developed 5 primary metrics to the Board of Regents in determining performance and accountability. And currently, there are 5 of those aligned with 17 goals for the Board of Regents strategic plan. Then in 2017, we did Session Bill 120, which repealed the Legislative Planning Committee and transferred all agency-based performance review functions to the Government Operations and Audit, where it remains today. Now, in discussing, and if you look at the components of the bill as what is being attempted, the information that is being collected, again, are we out to create, or are we out to utilize the information, utilize Government Operations and Audit Committee for those reports, and work with appropriations? I think it was alluded to that during last summer, there was a request for the Board of Regents. And you know, sometimes miscommunication does happen. And the intent and what the board presented was not initially what some of the members of the committee wanted. So as a result, then, we're moving to this step. We've been debating all this afternoon about the spending of taxpayer dollars, the appropriateness and the efficiency, and now we want to create another group. You all received this fact book, and I would challenge you, how many have sat down and looked at, because as I looked at what the bill is asking for, those items are found in there. So number one, we as legislators have access to that data that we're looking at. Secondly, we have the ability, and we have on a regular basis, for the Board of Regents to come to Government Operations and Audit to provide information. More importantly, simply because you do not sit on that committee does not indicate or does not stop you from saying to the committee, we need to have this kind of information, we need to have a presentation of this and collection. Your input is very vital. So what I'm trying to ask you to think about as you talk about this and debate this is, do we create another committee? Or do we have the committee and the tools that we have, but we need a better tool to engage all of you in the process? Or the final question is, do we become the Board of Regents then, and then we tell them what we believe should be the vision for the state of South Dakota? Or do we use the information that we have to apply it, to provide it, work through it? There are standing committees out there that do it. I just don't want to reinvent a wheel, and now you're going to add a third committee that is going to work with the Board of Regents when already appropriations and government operations is at your discretion and is at for your resources to utilize. I would ask you to please not support the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further remarks? I think Representative DeSanto will come over to you. Representative Roden. Representative DeSanto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I don't believe that the bill's sponsor wants to create a committee for just no reason, just for fun. I think that she sees a problem and she's trying to find a solution for it. And I commend the good representative from Minnehaha County for bringing this idea forward. Why do I believe that there are some problems that we maybe need to take a better look at? Well, let's take a look at tuition in South Dakota. As was previously mentioned, we have some of the lowest expenses in our state universities in the entire area, and yet we rank the second highest. Why is that? Why is it that in the last 10 years, Black Hills State University's had a 38% increase in their tuition? Dakota State has had a 39% increase. Northern, 40%. South Dakota School of Mines, 50%. South Dakota State University, 42%. And University of South Dakota, 47% increase in their tuition in the last 10 years. And that doesn't even start with fees. That's just the tuition. When you take a look at the fees that these colleges assess, you find at a minimum they've doubled. Some of them have actually tripled. And when I'm talking about fees, I'm not talking about $10 or $15 fees. For example, the law school charges a semester fee. Back in 2008, that semester fee was $348. Now the law school semester fee is $1,154. This is just in addition to tuition. This is just a fee. And so we've seen a tremendous uptick in not only tuition and fees, and I think this really warrants us taking a deeper look. I think this committee could be the tool that is necessary. In the South Dakota state government, the South Dakota Constitution, referring to the Board of Regents, it specifically states, the Board of Regents is not a fourth branch of government independent of legislative process. Legislative powers remain. That's right in our South Dakota State Constitution. The problem is that we're not currently utilizing what we could because of the limited time that we have to take a look at this monstrosity of a subject. We need more time. We need people specifically related to it, and I see this committee as a way to do it. Let's think about our South Dakota students that are having 40 and 50% tuition increases and get serious about looking for some solutions and using this committee as the tool to do that.
Representative Roden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the chamber. Well, I felt compelled to talk a little bit about starting with the committee process. This bill had an extensive hearing in State Affairs. When it was voted on, there was one member missing. We had a 6-6 tie on a substitute motion to defer to the 41st day. So we went back to the original motion, which was a due pass. I made the deciding vote as a committee chair, switched my vote from supporting the 41st day to supporting sending it to the floor. My motives were twofold. I think my primary consideration was getting it out of our committee because we were in deadlock, but also thought that it was worthy of conversation here, and we've had great conversation. So it brings me to the merits of the bill. And to the former speaker and other speakers who have brought out statistics in the regional system, I don't dispute any of that. I think they're all legitimate concerns. But I would ask you to go back in history. When I was a young legislator, GOAC was, you never heard the term mentioned because it was a do-nothing committee. And it was former Speaker Matt Michaels, when he became Speaker, I remember he reactivated GOAC. And I remember him giving instructions to the new chair that he appointed that he wanted them to resurrect themselves and do their job, government operations and audit. And so in the years since then, I've seen a transformation of GOAC, and they become more and more and more active. And even last year, if you remember the discussions we had when we were looking for replacements for the IM-22, we expanded, in lieu of that, we expanded the purview of the GOAC. They are in place. And part of the arguments against some of the articles in IM-22 was they represented creating new commissions, new committees that were redundant. And we went to GOAC to fill that void. The GOAC committee currently has the means and the process to deal with exactly that. Why in the world would we pass a bill that represents an expansion in government, in my view, to create another committee that would mirror the same responsibilities that GOAC already has in place? Bring these issues forward, but bring them through the GOAC committee. I think they've demonstrated that they have the resources, they have the personnel, and they have the experience to get to the bottom of these matters rather than reinventing a new commission or a new committee, funding it to do the things that we already have the ability to do. I would suggest that I have no qualms at all with any of the stuff that's brought forward. Bring it to the GOAC. I'd urge your opposition to House Bill 1186. Thank you.
Representative, I think I saw Hawley, and then we'll go Rosen.
Should I say ladies first, or is that not appropriate? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a quick comment. Please defeat this bill. As Speaker from Yankton had brought up, we've been through a lot of gyrations with the discussions in this, and I've been here in the last 8 years for these discussions. I think that our Legislative Planning Committee, through the last steps and the metrics that they developed in their program, were excellent metrics. And then since we've disbanded the Legislative Planning Committee, those have been handed over to GOAC for ongoing yearly to watch those. With our appropriations process we have and the hearing process that appropriations has for our Board of Regents. And finally, we have Board of Regents. If you all know a Board of Regent member, you know that's a full-time job. And they are actively involved in the management of our university systems. And they take it serious, the ones that I've talked to about it. I do not think we need another committee. We do not need to sit down and review the strategic plan for each university, center, and each institution in the state of South Dakota. That's not what we're elected to do. If we want to do that, we need to go to the Department of Transportation and talk to them about their strategic plan, and then we need to go to the Department of Ag. As legislators, we don't need to be doing that. We don't need to be in the weeds. We need to be up here, policy decisions. If we see a problem through the metrics that we're headed the wrong direction, I think it's fair for us to step in and have that discussion. But the program that we've got set up right now, the overwatch, the management, I think is adequate. Please defeat this bill.
Representative Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Some of you know I like numbers. So I just wanted to go back to the statistics that were brought up by one of the prior speakers. In South Dakota, our average, or our tuition at USD is $8,772. The average tuition for public universities across the nation is $9,139, or less. The 10-year historical rate increase in tuition is approximately 5% nationwide. The highest increase that I believe I heard was 4.7%, which was a 47% over 10 years. So all of those others are actually less than the national average. So even though we don't like to see the increases, I'm here to tell you we're not out of the ballpark on this. And going back in my time in the business that I'm in, the average increase nationally was actually 7% in tuition increases. So we're below what the nation is doing. I don't think that that's a good reason to support a bill where the facts are already available that we're looking for. Please vote no.
think Representative Jensen was next, and we'll go to you, Representative Ring.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A question for the sponsor.
You can go ahead and state your question.
I heard you mention the reserves that they're keeping. Can you tell me how much the reserve that the Board of Regents has in right now?
Representative Peterson.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Looking for my paper.
Okay. Is that the only question you have? You got anything else you want to say? Oh, she's looking.
I was just going to say that many of our institutions have a cap on reserves, and I believe the Board of Regents reserves is maybe many millions higher than most of us would think. Thank you.
Very good. Representative Peterson,
Yes,
you want to
thank-
answer his question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So keep in mind that the state's reserves are typically about 10%. So if we look at 2017 uncommitted cash numbers for each university, Black Hills State has 24.1% uncommitted cash, DSU 22.9%, NSU 22.4%, Mines 20.3%, SDSU 13.2%, and USD 20%. So those reserves are high compared to what we look at the state level at about 10%.
Thank you, Representative Ring. And then we about done with this one after this, maybe? Representative Ring, then we'll close it out. Oh, well, then we'll go to Anderson, and then we'll close it out. All right, Representative Ring.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you look at this bill, most of it is a list of data that this committee is supposed to gather. Most of that information is already available. The LRC staff put a lot of it together, I guess this summer in an issue memorandum. The Regents reports, I forget what it's called, but comes out every year, has many of those figures in it. A couple other interesting facts. It was brought up previously that we have relatively low costs in South Dakota. I think that says something about the efficient operation of the universities. Maybe I'm biased, but I think that's the case. We also have high tuition. How do you reconcile those two? At least relatively high tuition. How do you reconcile those two? Well, what's the difference between tuition revenue and total spending just for education? It's appropriations. South Dakota, appropriations per FTE, and this data is also available. I just found it online. It's not that hard to find. We appropriate about $2,000 per FTE credit hour, per FTE, not credit hour, forget that. $2,000 per FTE less than the U.S. average.
FTE, yeah, FTE be full-time student equivalent.
Right. Educational appropriations, that is appropriations that the state provides to support higher education, we're down 17.6% since the recession. The reason, a major explanation for the reason our tuition is so high is simply that the state appropriates less per student, less per faculty, less per whatever than most other states. One of the pieces of information that's asked for in this is state ranking of tuition and fees for undergraduates and graduate students. Readily available, it's already been discussed here. I'd like to suggest that we add, I'm not
Well, now, all
proposing
right,
an
just
amendment.
a general reminder.
State,
Let's not form the committee right here on the House floor. Let's decide whether or not we want to form a committee to debate this. Representative Ring, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to suggest that we also look at state ranking of state appropriations in support of Regents institutions. Maybe our state ranking nationally of state appropriations in support of scholarships. It's not too hard to understand what our problems are here. It's a lack of appropriations. It's a lack of adequate support for education from the state. Thank you.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the body.
I guess I want to just reinforce the concept, and it's been talked about over and over about GOAC. This is the area for GOAC, and GOAC certainly has a role, but the Appropriations Committee too is being proactive about this. We have set up some proposals that will deal with performance metrics. We are talking about even adding staff at the LRC to deal with performance metrics. That will play into what this bill is purporting to do. And so I see this as totally redundant between GOAC and appropriations. We've got these bases covered. We don't need another committee. Please vote no. Thank you.
Okay, let's remember there may not be a lot new to add to the debate. Anyone else? Representative Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. I wish I would have counted how many we don't like this bill. I'm going to vote yes. I hope that some of you will change your mind and also vote yes. I think this is a bill whose sponsor is just trying to do some planning, look ahead. And my seatmate and my district mate might be really pleased. Maybe we would come up with some of his ideas while we're looking into it. I don't think it's a bad idea to plan ahead, and I would encourage everybody to vote yes, and we don't know unless we ask and try.
Very good. Representative May.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know you're getting tired up there, so we're going to hurry right along.
Okay, now just remind you, this is whether or not we want to form a committee to look at the Board of Regents, not whether their tuition's too high, not whether there's programming that needs to be offered, whether we should form a committee. Go ahead.
Never mind.
Representative Peterson, why don't you close us out?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please keep in mind that this is forward-looking. It's not looking backward at the numbers. It's not asking that we gather the data. The data is there. It's asking that we are a part of the analysis and the planning process, and that we can partner with the Board of Regents to help them meet their challenges and capitalize on their opportunities. Keep in mind, it's forward-looking. I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Seeing no further remarks, the question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1186. All those members in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed, no. 1186 as amended. The clerk shall unlock the voting machine and the member shall proceed to vote.
Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were yeas 25, nays 43, excused 2.
House Bill 1186 as amended, having failed to receive the majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared failed.
House Bill 1213, an act to revise certain provisions regarding telephone and telegraph corporations.
House Bill 1213, having had its second reading, is up for consideration of final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I bring you another talker today. This point of order. Okay, I bring to you House Bill 1213. And let's go back to what this bill does is, it originated, the statute is 4931-1. This was written back in 1939, and hence you got the language of telephone and telegraph in the title, but this is the chapter. We'd have to have a much longer bill to take telegraph out because it's throughout the whole chapter, 49. But there's been one amendment to this statute since 1939, and It was a very minor amendment. So basically, we're breaking new ground here. 1213 takes the number 5 and changes it to 3. And the number 5 represents the number of people on the board of a telephone or telegraph corporation. Right now, you got to have 5 members on the board. We're asking to go to 3. Why are we doing this? I know for sure of one, there's possibly 2 locally owned telephone operations in South Dakota that are family owned. And if something was to happen to mom and dad, they would have some issues with the board. And the reason why, to form a board, that means the board members must also own stock in the corporation. So if something was to happen to 2 members, in order for it to continue, number one, the family would lose control, but number 2, they'd have to find somebody who's willing to buy in before they can be a board member. The other big issue in this is that the municipal utilities are allowed to operate in South Dakota with only a 3-member board. And also, you only need 1 person to incorporate under South Dakota Corporations Act or to incorporate a nonprofit in South Dakota. So all we're asking is to allow for a 3-member board for a telephone and telegraph corporation, and it's only going to affect 1, possibly 2 in South Dakota, and they are all in favor of this. I'd ask for your support. Thank you.
Further remarks? Representative Schaefer.
I guess I'll just give you some background. This is really from the people in my hometown, the Bauer family. They have, the owner, the dad, and 2 children, a son and a daughter. And now they can't because they got to have 5. So they want to change it to 3. So it's just very simple. It's just so they can be, I assume, have that corporation the way they want it. Thank you.
Representative Beal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question for the sponsor.
Go ahead.
The good representative from Hughes County, is this a movement to allow the bickering brothers to get into the phone business?
Okay, I don't think you need to answer that.
It doesn't involve brothers, so no. Thank you.
Send him your answer in Morse code. Representative Clark.
Mr. Speaker, a question for the sponsor.
Go ahead and state your question.
Would telegraph be like data for cable television or for internet?
Go ahead, and I didn't quite hear your question. Say that one more time.
Would telegraph be for data?
Well, go ahead. Representative Rounds.
No. Thank you.
Any further remarks? Seeing none. Question for the body is final passage of House Bill 1213. All those members in favor shall vote yes. Those opposed, no. Clerk will unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote. How'd this get off consent? Huh? Oh, hand those over here.
Pischke votes aye. Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there are yeas 66, nays 2, and excused 2.
House Bill 1213, having received the majority vote of the members elected, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved. Senate bills. Second reading of Senate bills.
Senate Bill 71, an act to revise certain provisions related to a license renewal for the practice of medicine, osteopathy, surgery, and obstetrics.
Senate Bill 71, having had its second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Hunhoff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last bill of the day. This bill is brought by the Medical Board of Osteopathic Examiners and Physicians in the sense they have been renewing their license every year. If you looked at a comparison among professionals in the state of South Dakota, their licensure is for 2 years. So they're putting in a bill they can go from 1 year to 2 year. The other changes in there would be they're moving their fee. They're just moving it. For 1 year it was $200, and now for 2 years it's going to be $400. So it's just like yearly, but doing it on the second. And then the last piece that they're adding is in section number 4. They were already doing this, but they wanted to put it in statute, so it's there. So those are the reasons for the changes that they're doing. I hope you could support the bill, and I'll stand by for any questions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further remarks? Seeing none, the question before the body is final passage, Senate Bill 71. All those members in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed, no. Clerk will unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote.
Representative Shanefish votes aye. Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were yeas 66, nays 2, and excused 2.
Senate Bill 71, having received the majority vote of the members elected, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved. I think we are to announcements. Representative Duvall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Transportation tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Otten.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Ag and Natural Resources tomorrow morning, 7:45.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Ketwig.
House Local Government, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Representative Haggard.
House Tax tomorrow morning, 7:45.
Representative Steinhauer.
Health and Human Services at 8:30 tomorrow morning.
Representative Howard.
There's a luncheon tomorrow. Family Heritage Alliance is putting it on. It's at noon at Community Bible Church. So everyone's welcome to come. You should have got a postcard, but this is just a reminder.
Thank you. Further announcements, Representative Heineman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Catholic legislators are meeting at 7 a.m. in the morning, 499. Everyone is welcome for a prayer group.
Representative Allers.
Appropriations, 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. We have the Department of Education.
Oh. Thank you. All right. I got a few. Bill, who else has an announcement? Representative Johns?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Ed, again, will be meeting immediately after close of session and the Speaker's chambers, or the Speaker's lobby, not your chambers, I'm sorry.
You got a Speaker's lobby, House Ed, immediately following on that smokeout. I got to read off some signing of some bills. Anyone else have an announcement? The Speaker signed Senate Concurrent Resolution number 6. The Speaker signed Senate, oh, that's the same thing twice. Speaker signs Senate Concurrent Resolution number, oh, it's a whole bunch. The Speaker signs House Bill 1009, an act to revise certain provisions regarding the administration of benefits provided to veterans. The Speaker signs an act to revise certain provisions regarding the maximum number of apprentices in a salon, House Bill 1027. The Speaker signs House Bill 1064, an act to expand the options for the beneficial disposition or use of certain real estate located in Minnehaha County. The Speaker signs House Bill 1098, an act to make an appropriation from the Water and Environment Fund and its revolving fund subfunds. Speaker signs House Concurrent Resolution 1003, promoting a resilient and healthy Black Hills forest. Speaker signs Senate Bill 21, an act to update references to certain federal motor carrier regulations. Speaker signs Senate Bill 26, an act to revise certain provisions regarding public grain buyers. Speaker signs Senate Bill 32, an act to place certain substances on the controlled substances schedule and declare an emergency. Speaker signs Senate Bill 39, an act to revise certain provisions regarding permitted improvements on school and public lands. The Speaker signs Senate Bill 52, an act to authorize the Board of Regents to demolish an SDSU building. Speaker signs Senate Bill 56, an act to make an appropriation to fund tax refunds for elderly persons and persons with disabilities. Speaker signs Senate Bill 60, an act to revise the administrative rulemaking authority for the Department of Human Services. Speaker signs Senate Bill 75, an act to establish certain provisions regarding the dispensing of biological projects. Speaker signs Senate Bill 88, an act to revise certain provisions in regarding disinterment permits. Speaker signs Senate Bill 22, an act to allow commercial driver license applicants 3 attempts to pass the commercial driver's license examination. Speaker signs an act to make an appropriation for costs related to suppression of wildfires. Speaker signs Senate Bill 45, an act to revise certain provisions regarding the sale of unclaimed property. Speaker signs Senate Bill 48, an act to authorize the Board of Regents to purchase improved agricultural real property in Meade County. Speaker signs Senate Bill 66, an act to require each school board to provide certain information regarding school elections in the school board minutes. Speaker signs Senate Bill 67, an act to permit a victim of child sex trafficking or exploitation to expunge any criminal or delinquency record obtained as a result of the victimization. And the Speaker signs House Bill 1010, an act to revise certain provisions regarding federal protections for National Guard members. Representative Beal. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries.